Sunday mornings used to be sacred. I don't mean in a religious sense, I'm not that guy, but there was something about the routine of it. A quiet kind of ritual. Sleep in a bit later, wake to the smell of coffee, maybe flip pancakes while Sarah hummed to some indie playlist in the background. We talk about everything and nothing. Plans for the week, dumb jokes, the weather. It was simple, ordinary, and maybe that was what I loved most about it. But this particular Sunday morning didn't feel ordinary. I was standing by the kitchen window, halfway through my first cup of coffee, when I saw Sarah's phone buzz on the counter. No big deal, phones buzz. But something about the way her body tensed when it lit up made me glance over. I didn't mean to snoop. It wasn't some conscious decision. My eyes just flicked toward the screen, and that was when I saw it. A notification from her group chat at work, with a photo preview. It was her, standing at a crowded bar, drink in hand, smiling, but not at the camera. At a guy beside her. A guy with his hand around her waist. Not hovering, not playful, but resting there like it belonged. Like he'd done it before. I didn't recognize him. Tall, maybe a little older than me. Clean-cut, confident. Her body was angled toward his like they were mid-laugh, like the whole room had fallen away around them. The photo disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. Sarah turned the phone over, the screen down, as if it had never been there. She gave me a quick smile, like she was trying to cover a yawn. That? Oh, just from Friday night, she said, brushing a piece of hair behind her ear. The team went out after that marathon meeting. You know how it is, everyone blowing off steam. Total chaos. Her voice was light, even amused, like it was nothing. A silly night. An inside joke I wasn't part of. I tried to mirror her energy. Tried to keep my face neutral as I nodded. Yeah, looked like a good time. She laughed. Barely even remember it. I think they just post everything now. Honestly, it was all pretty tame. But something in her tone felt polished. Rehearsed. Too smooth, like she'd practiced saying it in the mirror. I knew that voice. I'd heard her use it in meetings when she wanted to dodge a question without sounding defensive. It was her deflection tone, the one she used when she was hiding stress or frustration. It wasn't that the story didn't make sense. It just made too much sense. It fit together so neatly that it raised more questions than it answered. She picked up her phone and walked over to the sink, talking about something random. A new project she was leading, how her boss was finally giving her real autonomy. I nodded along, pretending to listen, but I couldn't get that image out of my head. Her waist, his hand, the comfort of it, and the way she didn't even flinch when I saw it. That stuck with me more than anything. Not panic, not guilt, just a calm, easy pivot into another conversation, like she'd already gamed out how to explain it if I happened to notice. That's what did it. That's when the seed was planted. Not full-blown paranoia, not yet, but something quieter. A knot in my stomach I couldn't untie. After breakfast, she went upstairs to take a shower. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to clean up, but really I was just staring out the window. I could hear the water running, the faint echo of her singing something under her breath. Maybe Phoebe Bridgers, maybe Mitski, I couldn't tell. I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, and searched through her tagged photos. Nothing new. Her profile was the same mix of coffee art, sunsets, and photos of us at restaurants with captions like, "My favorite person." I clicked through a few old posts from our anniversary last year. Smiles that looked real at the time. Maybe they were. I put the phone down and rubbed my eyes. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was just tired, or feeling weird because work had been rough lately. But if I was being honest, it wasn't the first time I'd felt that quiet shift. Like something had changed, and I'd only just started noticing. Over the past few weeks, she'd been different. Not dramatically, just a bit more distant. Less touch, less laughter. Little things you tell yourself are just stress. Just life getting in the way. But now I couldn't help but reframe it all. When she came back downstairs, dressed and towel drying her hair, I asked her casually, "Who's the guy from the photo?" She blinked. "What photo?" "The one from this morning. In the message. You were at the bar and he had his hand on your waist." She paused just long enough for it to register. "Oh, Michael," she said with a shrug. "He's new. Just joined the team last quarter. Super smart, kind of intense. But it's nothing like that. He's married." I nodded slowly. "Got it." She smiled again. That same practiced, confident smile. "Seriously, you don't need to worry. Office people are just weirdly close sometimes." I didn't push it. I just nodded again and walked over to refill my coffee. But something had changed in that moment, and I knew it. I couldn't unsee what I saw, and I couldn't unhear how perfectly she explained it away. Something was wrong. I didn't have proof yet, but the feeling had settled in, heavy and real. That photo wasn't just a photo. It was a shift. The kind that starts small and quiet but eventually cracks everything wide open. And I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. But for the first time, I wasn't sure I really knew my wife at all. After that Sunday morning, I started noticing everything. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't help it anymore. Once doubt creeps in, it spreads. It changes the way you see the world, twists ordinary moments into questions you don't want to ask. And it turns out there were a lot of questions. Like why Sarah had suddenly started working so late 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Before, she used to text me when she was on her way home. Now she'd just walk in close to midnight, heels in hand, hair slightly undone, with that breathless, half-apologetic smile. "God, what a day," she'd sigh. You would not believe how long the strategy meeting ran. But her stories never had details. Just vague complaints and recycled buzzwords. "It's chaos right now," she said. "We're in full sprint mode." Once or twice I asked who stayed that late with her. She always gave the same answer: the whole team. But something about that didn't sit right. Because the whole team used to mean names I'd actually heard: Madison, Jeff, sometimes Raj. But now she never said names. Just everyone. Everyone started feeling like no one. And it wasn't just the late nights. There were the brunches, too. Sarah had always loved catching up with her girlfriends on weekends. But it used to be different. She used to come back full of stories, laughing about something dumb someone said, showing me pictures of matcha lattes and avocado toast. I'd sit there and listen to her talk for half an hour about someone's new apartment or a terrible date one of her friends had gone on. Lately, though, she came back quiet, distant, like she'd been somewhere else entirely. When I asked how brunch was, she'd shrug. It was fine. Nothing exciting. Then she'd disappear into the bedroom or start scrolling on her phone, barely present. She stopped sharing things with me, stopped asking me about my day, too. At first, I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe she was burned out. I even looked up articles about stress in high-performing professionals, hoping to find something to explain the shift. Something logical. Something other than the voice in my head that kept saying, "This isn't right." But logic only goes so far when your heart feels like it's quietly breaking. And then there was her phone. I didn't notice the password change right away. But one evening I was setting the table for dinner, and her phone buzzed. She was upstairs, so I reached for it, planning to bring it to her. When I picked it up, the screen asked for a passcode. That was new. We'd never needed passcodes before. Not because we were monitoring each other, but because there was never a reason not to trust. When she came downstairs, I handed it to her. "You changed your password?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She barely blinked. "Oh yeah, IT required it. New security protocol. You know how paranoid they are about leaks." I nodded. Right? Makes sense. She was already flipping through her notifications, unfazed. But it didn't make sense. Her phone wasn't connected to anything sensitive. She worked in strategy and marketing, not cybersecurity. And even if IT had required it, why not mention it sooner? A few days later, I caught her snapping her laptop shut the second I walked into the room. She smiled too quickly. "I was just reading something dumb on Reddit. You'd have made fun of me." I didn't push. But the truth is, Sarah never used Reddit. That was my thing. She'd even joked about it once, calling it Twitter for introverts. And maybe the most ridiculous part? Even her perfume changed. It used to be this soft, clean scent. Something subtle I could smell when she curled into me on the couch. But somewhere in the last month, she'd switched to something new. Heavier. Bolder. The kind of perfume that made an entrance. One night, I said something about it. New scent. And she lit up a little too brightly. Yeah, she said. Madison gave me a sample. Isn't it *XY? I said it smelled nice. But it didn't smell like her. It smelled like someone trying to be noticed. One night, I stayed up late waiting for her. She said she had a team dinner. I didn't ask where. Didn't want to seem controlling. That's the game you play when you start doubting someone you love. You collect evidence, but you're terrified to admit what it means. She got home close to 1 a.m. Heels in hand, laughing softly at something on her phone. I watched from the hallway as she paused at the mirror near the front door, fixed her hair, and smiled at her reflection before she even noticed I was there. She jumped when I spoke. Everything okay? Her hand flew to her chest. Jesus, you scared me. You're late. I know. I'm sorry. We had one of those team bonding nights. Honestly, it was exhausting. She kissed my cheek, quick and cold. I tried to smell her perfume, to see if it was his scent I was picking up instead of her own. She didn't ask why I was awake. I watched her walk to the bedroom, wondering how long I'd been sleeping next to someone who was already somewhere else. Over the next week, I started jotting things down in a notes app on my phone. Not to be obsessive, at least that's what I told myself, but just to keep track. Times, places, excuses, looking for patterns. What I saw wasn't definitive, but it was enough. Late nights followed by no stories. Plans that shifted last minute. Clothing that felt too curated for casual outings. Random mood swings, too cheerful in the morning, too cold at night. And once, on a Saturday, she said she was grabbing coffee with a friend. But she left an address I'd never seen before. A sleek black thing that didn't scream, casual coffee. I didn't ask who the friend was. I didn't ask where they were meeting. I just nodded and watched her walk out the door. After she left, I opened my laptop and stared at a blank document for almost an hour. I wasn't sure what I was writing. Maybe nothing. Maybe just giving myself permission to stop pretending everything was fine. By the end of the night, I had one sentence typed out. You don't hide things you're proud of. And Sarah was hiding a lot. There's a strange moment between suspicion and confirmation. It's not relief. It's not even pain, not at first. It's more like standing on the edge of something and realizing all at once that you were right to be afraid of the drop. You feel it before you see it. The gut-level awareness that the world you thought you lived in just cracked open. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday night. I was looking for an old insurance file. Something dumb and boring, one of those adult responsibilities you always forget about until it's suddenly urgent. I remembered we had a tablet tucked away in the bottom drawer of our console table in the living room. It was one of those off-brand Androids we barely used, mostly for Netflix on flights. I hadn't thought about it in years. I dug it out, wiped off a layer of dust, and held down the power button. To my surprise, it still turned on. The battery icon blinked red, so I plugged it in and left it charging on the counter. I almost forgot about it until later that night, after Sarah went to bed. She'd been unusually quiet all evening, claimed she had a headache and turned in early. No kiss goodnight, just a muffled night as she disappeared down the hall. I sat alone in the kitchen for a while, scrolling through the same dumb headlines I always scroll through when I can't sleep. But my mind kept drifting back to the tablet. Eventually, I picked it up again. The screen was bright now, fully charged. I swiped through the old home screen, half a dozen outdated apps, some vacation photos from 3 years ago. Felt like opening a time capsule. Harmless. Until I tapped the Gmail icon. I don't know why I did it. I wasn't looking for anything, not consciously. But I was already in the habit of noticing, of questioning. And when the inbox loaded, still synced to Sarah's account, I felt something twist in my chest. She'd never logged out. I told myself I would look for 1 minute. Just enough to satisfy my curiosity. Just to see if there was anything, to quiet the noise in my head. But I didn't find quiet. I found Michael. That was the name. The same name she had offhandedly mentioned that Sunday, the guy from the bar photo. The one whose hand had rested so naturally on her waist. His name was all over her inbox. The subject lines were innocent enough at first. Follow-up from Friday, notes from leadership training, travel reimbursement form. But deeper down the thread, the tone shifted. The messages changed. They weren't about work. I clicked one from 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, "Can't stop thinking about last weekend." Inside was a short message. "You in that robe. I can't get the image out of my head. Same time next Friday?" Attached was a photo. Sarah, in a white hotel robe, hair still damp, sitting on a bed with her knees tucked up. Her eyes were locked on the camera. Soft, familiar, but not meant for me. I scrolled down. Another message. "Rooms already booked. They gave me the corner suite again. Bring that black dress I like." And another. "Still dreaming about the jacuzzi. You, me, just us." I kept scrolling. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop. Photos. Dozens of them. Hotel rooms. Wine glasses. Dimly lit mirrors with her reflection in the background. A picture of her pressed up against him in a hot tub, steam rising between them like a curtain. Her head resting on his shoulder. Her eyes closed. Int asterisk mate. Relaxed. Happy. They'd been doing this for months. I checked the timestamps. The dates matched every excuse she had given me. Every team retreat. Every client dinner out of town. Every weekend she'd left me behind with a kiss on the cheek and a promise to call before bed. She never did call. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was methodical, repeated, carefully crafted. She built a second life in the quiet spaces between our shared one. I felt the tablet grow heavier in my hands. My chest was tight. My stomach churned, but my mind was numb, like it had finally run out of reasons to make excuses. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't a gut feeling or a bad vibe or a theory. This was proof. Undeniable, unflinching proof that the woman I married, the woman who sat across from me at breakfast, whose laundry I folded, whose favorite wine I kept stocked without her asking, had been lying to my face, over and over, and doing it well. I don't remember how long I sat there, scrolling, reading, rereading. At one point, I opened the Photos app and checked to see if anything had been saved locally. There were a few videos. One from inside the hotel room. I didn't watch it. Couldn't. I closed the tablet. My hands were shaking. I felt like a fool. Like I'd been wandering through a house that had already burned down, wondering why it felt so cold. I didn't confront her that night. I thought about it. Almost stood outside the bedroom door, hand on the knob. But there was something about the silence, the weight of it all, that told me I needed to think, to breathe, to be smart. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want a screaming match or some half-baked explanation full of denials and blame-shifting. I wanted truth, and I wanted control. So I sat in the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and opened a blank document on my laptop. I started listing the files, the photos, the timestamps. I saved everything to a secure folder and emailed it to myself, just in case. I backed it up to a flash drive. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I wasn't about to let her rewrite the story later. I needed to be prepared. Around 2:30 a.m. I finally turned off the light. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing, listening to the silence of the house that still smelled like her perfume. And that's when it hit me. It was already over. She just hadn't told me yet. There was no rage. I thought there would be. I thought I'd want to smash something, scream at the ceiling, punch a wall, rip the tablet in half. But all I felt that morning, after seeing the truth, was a kind of stillness. Not peace, far from it, but something colder, quieter. Like the storm had already passed and I was standing in the wreckage, alone, staring at what was left. Sarah came into the kitchen that morning like she always did. Hair wet from a shower, phone in hand, wearing that oversized sweatshirt from college she'd never thrown out. She kissed my cheek, smiled like nothing had happened, and asked if we needed anything from the grocery store. I told her we were out of eggs. Felt like lying. She didn't notice. She scrolled through her phone while sipping her coffee, probably texting him. And I just stood there, nodding along while she talked about some big deliverable due at work. I watched her face like I was seeing it for the first time. Every expression, every word, it all felt like theater now. Like I was watching someone play a part she'd rehearsed so well she didn't even realize she was acting. But I didn't say anything. Not then. Because by the time I finished my second cup of coffee, I had already decided. I wasn't going to fight for this marriage. I wasn't going to beg for answers or listen to half-hearted apologies or sit through gaslighting sessions where she tried to make me question what I saw with my own eyes. I wasn't going to plead with someone who had already walked out emotionally and just forgot to shut the door behind her. I was done. So I started preparing. Quietly, deliberately. I copied every piece of evidence, emails, photos, videos, onto a secure drive and hid it in the glove compartment of my car. I backed up everything to the cloud, encrypted under a new email account. I cleared my browser history. I changed my own passwords, banking, credit cards, insurance, the works. I started pulling together my personal documents, things I hadn't looked at in years. Birth certificate, passport, tax returns, titles. All of it went into a folder in my closet. All of it ready to go. I wasn't planning a dramatic exit. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want her to walk in and find me shoving clothes into a suitcase like some bad movie. No, I wanted it clean, final, sharp, and I wanted her to know I had known. So I wrote the letter. Not a long one, just a few sentences, really, but every word mattered. Sarah, I saw everything. You don't have to lie. I'm not angry. Not anymore. But this, whatever it was, it ends here. I won't be a part of something built on betrayal. I'm not staying for closure, and I'm not asking for an explanation. I hope one day you'll understand what you've lost. D. I folded it once. Placed it on the kitchen table under her favorite coffee mug, the one that said, "But first, coffee," in faded cursive. I left the ring next to it. Not in a dramatic flourish, just final. That was what I wanted it to feel like. Final. I packed lightly. Just the essentials. A couple days of clothes, my laptop, the flash drive, some cash. I didn't need much. The rest could wait. The house didn't feel like mine anymore anyway. Felt like a showroom. Carefully curated. Scrubbed clean of real emotion. I drove for hours. No music. No podcasts. Just the sound of tires on the road and my thoughts looping over themselves. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But there were no tears left. Just a dull ache that sat in my chest like a weight. Not the kind of pain that demanded attention. Just the kind that reminds you, every few seconds, that something has broken. I ended up at a little motel off the highway. Nothing fancy. A cheap, quiet place with a chipped vending machine in the lobby and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. I paid in cash, took the key, closed the door behind me, and I exhaled. For the first time in what felt like months, I was alone without pretending. Alone without performing. I turned off my phone, sat on the edge of the bed, and just existed. For a while, I didn't think about what came next. I didn't think about lawyers or divorce papers or explaining things to friends and family. I didn't think about what she was doing when she found the letter, or how she would react when she realized I was gone. I just listened to the silence. And then, after some time, I stood up, opened my laptop, and started researching. I looked up attorneys in the area, ones with experience in handling infidelity-related cases. I read reviews, checked credentials, started narrowing down names. I made a list. 5 good options. One especially promising, discreet, with a reputation for being relentless but calm. I bookmarked her site. Then I emailed her. Just a brief note. Hello. I'm looking to schedule a consultation regarding a possible divorce. There has been infidelity in the marriage, and I have documented proof. I'm not looking for revenge. Just a clean and fair separation. Please advise on next steps. I didn't expect an immediate reply, but sending it felt like reclaiming something. Like I'd finally stopped being the guy sitting in the dark waiting for someone to tell him the truth. I went to bed that night in a room that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. The sheets were stiff. The air was dry. But I slept, deeper than I had in weeks. Maybe months. No dreams. No tossing. Just sleep. And when I woke up, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what she was doing or whether she had read the letter. I didn't imagine her crying or cursing or texting me 20 times in a row. I didn't care. I got dressed, ate a protein bar, and drove to the attorney's office. The receptionist was kind. The lawyer was kinder. Sharp, direct, all business but not cold. She listened. She didn't ask for details I wasn't ready to give. She just nodded, took notes, and laid out the process like it was a roadmap out of hell. "Do you want to serve her immediately?" she asked. I paused, thought about it. "No," I said. "Not yet. I want to move my things out first. Quietly. Then you can send the papers." She nodded. Smart. That word stuck with me. Smart. It didn't feel like I'd been smart. I'd been blind. Gullible. Stupid. But maybe smart came after. Maybe it was about what you did once the blinders were off. That afternoon, I drove back to the house. She wasn't home. I went room by room, collecting what I needed. My clothes, my tools, my books, a few things from the office. I left the framed photos. I didn't need them. They didn't mean what they used to mean. I worked quickly, quietly. By the time she got home, if she even came home, I would be gone again. And that would be the last time she'd ever come home to us. Because we didn't exist anymore. Some betrayals are hidden in private corners, in hushed texts, hotel rooms, and the silence between two people sitting at the same dinner table. But others are loud, public, so brazen that you don't just see the truth, you feel it slap you across the face in front of a crowd. For me, that slap came 2 weeks after I left. I'd been staying at the cabin, an old place I inherited from my uncle years ago and barely touched since. No Wi-Fi, no smart thermostat, no doorbell cam. Just the kind of stillness that forces you to hear your own thoughts whether you want to or not. I filled the days fixing things, patching up the roof, repainting the porch, even replaced the busted dock planks by the water. I kept myself busy, kept my hands moving. But Sarah still crept into my mind like fog. Every night, every morning, every time I saw her name on my phone screen, even though I never opened the texts. I didn't respond to any of them. Not one. I thought I was done seeing her. Thought I was past needing to. Until a mutual friend, Chris, one of the few people I still trusted, invited me to a company party. It was for a product launch. Casual. Semi-formal. A networking celebration, he called it. I almost said no, but he was insistent. Said it might be good for me to be around people again. And maybe he was right. After 2 weeks alone, I was starting to forget what conversations sounded like when they didn't echo off cabin walls. So I agreed. I wore a blazer that hadn't seen the light of day since a friend's wedding last fall. Tried not to overthink it. It wasn't Sarah's office, technically. It was a shared event with several companies who partnered on a launch. I figured odds were low she'd even be there. I was wrong. The event was held at a rooftop space downtown. One of those swanky venues with string lights, glass railings, and too much minimalist furniture. Music floated over the chatter of clinking glasses and pitchy laughter. Everyone looked polished, like LinkedIn profiles come to life. I tried to stay near the bar, keep my distance, smile, nod, make small talk with strangers who didn't know anything about my life imploding in slow motion. But the moment I saw her, the entire room shifted. Sarah. She entered through the side hallway, laughing too loudly, already glowing with attention. She wore a shimmering silver dress I had never seen before. Tight, backless, the kind of thing you don't just throw on for casual drinks. Her hair was pinned up in loose waves, makeup perfect, heels unapologetically tall. She looked like someone performing, someone very aware of being watched. And he was watching her. Michael, standing not far behind her, drink in hand. No tie, top button undone, that same smug, polished air I remembered from the photos. He wasn't touching her, but he didn't need to. His presence was an extension of hers. She laughed, and he grinned. She adjusted her dress, and he leaned in like he owned the view. They weren't hiding. Not anymore. It wasn't an affair now, it was a debut. I don't think they saw me at first. I stood behind a cluster of potted palms near the bar, stunned into stillness. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave right then and there. Part of me wanted to walk straight up to them, look Sarah in the eyes and say nothing. Just stand there with the weight of what she'd done thick between us. But I didn't move. I watched. Long enough to see her grab a glass of champagne and float from conversation to conversation like a host at a wedding she didn't pay for. Michael trailed just far enough behind her to avoid being glued to her side, but close enough that everyone could see they were a pair. People noticed. I could see it in their glances. The way some coworkers nodded politely and kept walking. The way others whispered behind their hands. Eyes flicking from Sarah to Michael to their phones. She looked like she didn't care. Or maybe she wanted it this way. That's what hit me the hardest. The secrecy was over. She didn't need to lie anymore. She wasn't hiding anything. And that meant she wasn't just cheating on me. She was done with me. Fully. She had crossed a line and kept walking. And I'd been stupid enough to wonder if she missed me. At some point, I must have looked away. Focused on my drink. Checked my phone. Anything to give my mind a break from the theater unraveling in front of me. But when I looked up again, she was staring at me. Eyes locked. No smile. No shock. Just blank. I don't know what I expected. Panic? Shame? Regret? None of that. Just recognition. And maybe a flicker of annoyance. Like I had shown up to a party where I didn't belong anymore. She didn't come over. She didn't wave. She just turned, leaned in to say something to Michael, and the two of them melted into the crowd. I stood there for a few more minutes, long enough to feel every possible emotion hit me like waves. Embarrassment, anger, heartbreak, numbness. Then I left. Didn't say goodbye to Chris. Didn't tell anyone. I just walked out, rode the elevator down in silence, and stepped into the humid night like I was waking up from something. The city looked different, noisier, more artificial, like someone had replaced the world I knew with a cheap imitation. I got into my car, shut the door, and sat in the silence for a long time before turning the key. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just drove back to the cabin. And when I got there, I sat by the lake until sunrise, watching the water ripple in the wind. My phone buzzed twice, unread messages from Sarah. I didn't open them. I just turned the screen face down on the dock and let it vibrate against the wood until it stopped. She could say whatever she wanted, explain whatever she thought needed explaining. But what I saw that night told me everything. She hadn't just lied to me. She'd replaced me, publicly, proudly, and that made all the difference. That night at the party didn't hurt because it showed me something new. It hurt because it confirmed what I already knew. The Sarah I loved didn't exist anymore. She was someone else now. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone I didn't want to know. I left that night for good. Drove straight to the lakeside cabin and never looked back. The silence there wasn't empty. It was honest. I took up work fixing boats and repairing docks. Tasks that didn't lie or hide meaning. My hands grew rough, but my mind quieted. No more late-night doubts. No more pretending. Just wood, water, and the slow rhythm of healing. In that quiet place, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. Weeks later, word got around. Sarah's affair had exploded. Michael's wife exposed everything. Emails, photos, office gossip spread fast, and Sarah's image crumbled with it. She reached out through friends, but I never answered. I had no interest in what was already over. What she broke in silence, she destroyed in public. I left it all behind. What I carried forward was peace, and the kind of freedom only truth can give.